Welcome to open class number 112. Hope you'll find a lot of value here. We're going to jump into it in a second. Just want to say, as always, nothing here is medical advice, just general thoughts that I hope will be helpful to anyone that submitted a question here or who's just tuning in. And so, yeah, without further ado, let us look at the 3 messages that we have today. The first one is from Dominic, who's been a member of the community here for quite some time. I think has submitted a few questions. Also did, I think, the free trial portion of BedTyme. Anyway, let's read this. BedTyme said, Dominic said, I started sticking to a schedule on April 19th. It's now June 25th, and I still have not seen progress when it comes to sleep. I always wake up 1 to 2 hours before my wake-up time. I never seem to get past 5 or 6 hours of sleep. And my ability to fall into micro sleep like I was able to my whole life until 2019 is still gone. I don't understand what's going on. People mentioned it would get better, and 2 months later, I'm not seeing it. Wednesday, I had to leave work 2 hours in because of how awful I felt from not sleeping well. Today, I'm in the same boat, struggling to make it through. I promise you, I stopped being consumed about sleep and worrying about it and trying to control outcomes. Yet, this is still happening. What is the deal? So I want to say there are many things to talk about in this message. Dominic, thanks for being in touch, by the way, and sorry to hear about the struggle, of course. I think let's talk about the last part here, which is hearing that, I'm not giving it any attention. I'm not thinking about it, and it's still nothing changes. To me, that's a little bit like if you think about, let's say you lost your glasses, like you can't find your glasses, right? And then you remember people saying that, you actually find the things when you're not looking for them, right? So you decide, okay, I'm not going to look for them. And then 2 hours go by and you're like, dang it, I've not been looking for my glasses for 2 hours and I still can't find them. I literally not been looking for them and I still didn't find them. And when you hear this, you see that when you were deciding not to look for the glasses, there was some intent there. The intent with it was to find the glasses. So you were still looking for the glasses, right? Which is different from like when you truly I don't know, where they'll show up at some point. Then sure enough, when you find them, you don't actually know how much time it took, but it feels like it was pretty immediate because you weren't looking for them. You weren't spending time looking for them. And they're like, oh, there they are. Perfect. Right? So same thing here, that when you find yourself thinking, I've not been thinking about sleep or obsessing about sleep or paying attention to it, but nothing has changed. That means there was still some, some attempt at trying to make sleep happen, if you will. There was still some effort there. And it's very similar to what we read in the beginning of this message, which was a lot of attention to detail. I started this schedule on this and this date, and it's now this and this date. And I fall asleep. It takes me I wake up 1 to 2 hours after sleep. I don't sleep more than 5 to 6 hours. It's a lot of attention to detail. And then we have the word still. We have the word still, which I highlighted on the thumbnail of this video, because we can learn so much from that one single word. When someone says, for example, I have been befriending wakefulness. I've been teaching the brain that wakefulness is not dangerous, but I still am not sleeping anymore. Then we can see that there was an intent to make sleep happen when that person, tried to sort of use befriending wakefulness as a technique to make sleep happen. So there's effort there. And whenever you find yourself using the word still, that means you were waiting for something to happen. Your brain was in a problem-solving mode, and it was thinking in the terms of, if I do X, this will result in Y. And when Y it doesn't materialize, then the thought becomes, still no change. There's still no change. I've been doing this, but there is still no change. Which we see again is like whenever you try to make sleep happen, it doesn't happen, right? And having like a schedule, I think, can be helpful if you're someone who has been spending a long time, a lot of hours in bed, trying to sleep, going to bed early, staying in bed late, in the morning, catching up for sleep, etc. Then then allotting less time for sleep. Let's say saying that, okay, I'm going to get up at 6 every morning. I'm not going to check the time after 10 p.m., something like that. It's sort of just a little nudge towards less control, to letting it go, not tracking the time, being more okay with being awake, not trying to make up for lost sleep, being okay with not sleeping, letting go. The schedule idea, the timeless sleep window that I called, is just kind of a way of letting go. But when approached as a technique to achieve something, then it's just the same as melatonin, or avoiding coffee or anything else that is an effort. And now the third thing here was the what I call the battle scars. And if you just search the channel for, or you can just search YouTube for Insomnia Insight Battle Scars, and you'll find it. Or you can go into the This Is Natto playlist, which is in the description of all the new videos. You'll find the episode on battle scars, which basically describes how when you haven't slept much, you've had one of those sleepless nights, or a stretch of them, and you're tired, your eyes are bloodshot, your eyes are itchy, you have tinnitus, you're ringing in the ears, you have pain, you feel nauseous, you have pain, you feel frustrated, you can't focus, you may have this out-of-body experiences, and all those things. The brain, again, in this problem-solving mode, often thinks, of course, I didn't sleep, therefore I'm feeling this way, which is not entirely true. I don't think it's much true at all, actually. And it leads to performance anxiety. It leads to so much pressure, because I don't want to feel this way, so I have to sleep. And then, of course, with that pressure, you don't sleep again, and you feel that same way. But what is so tricky to see is that it was the struggle, it was the frustration that comes with not being successful, again, having a sleepless night, no matter how you try, just the self-blame, the criticism, why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? That struggle is so draining, and it leads to all these battle scars. But the key thing there is to see that there is no enemy, there's no enemy. The battle scars are a proof of a battle. There was a struggle, and that makes you feel really, really, in pain, but there's no enemy. And so when we see that, it's like, okay, so why am I battling so much? Why am I trying? Why am I attempting? Why am I trying to achieve? Why I have this goal-oriented mindset? Maybe I can let it be. And then when you abandon the struggle, when you abandon the battle, when you're not trying so much anymore, then things get much easier. So those were the things that came up to me as I was reading this. And Dominic, I hope this helped. Please let us know if there's any follow-up questions. Of course, hang in there. And we have a live question, which is from US. Before becoming a sleep coach, were you a therapist or what? Actually, I was a sleep doctor, sleep physician. And briefly, my story is that as part of a training to become a sleep physician, there was a little bit on CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, which I saw when I started practicing as a sleep physician. There were so many people with insomnia. That was, to me, that was a little bit of a surprise. I thought I would, work with other things. And then I saw I started using the CBTI approach, and I saw that it could be helpful, but there were some problems with it. And that kind of evolved to what I do now. So that's kind of my story in very briefly there. Thanks for asking. All right, let's jump ahead to our next question, or next message, which is from Mike. So Mike says, "Hi, Daniel. Thank you for your kind email. Here are the questions I have. Number one, I've been experiencing chronic insomnia for the past few months with mixed results. Before I found you, I came across Dr. Guy Meadows, who preaches ACT treatment using mindfulness as a core to promote quiet wakefulness at night in order to teach the brain to equate wakefulness as a friend, not a foe. I've had a certain degree of success, but been experiencing relapses lately. I'm keen to compare it with what you propose, which is just to find something enjoyable to do during wakefulness to retrain the brain. I notice with quiet wakefulness, my next day is not horrible at all, with a bit of energy to carry the day through." So I think the question is kind of what's similar, what's different between Guy Meadows, the ACT approach, and what I teach here. And I want to just comment on this thing to much that I noticed with quiet wakefulness, my next day is not so horrible at all, which goes back to what we talked about in regards to Dominic's message, that when there is this abandonment of the struggle, then you feel you have a little bit more energy during the day, right? It's not to do with how many hours you slept. In fact, you can have a great time, being out with your friends, and you like decide to pull an all-nighter and you have so much fun, and then you go to work the next day and you feel a little tired, but you had a great day. It just shows that how much we sleep has not that much impact on how we feel the following day. Or you could have a stretch of nights where you're hard asleep, and then you literally win the lottery on the fourth day, and then you didn't sleep at all the night before because you were so excited about this or whatever, and then you still, so again, the quiet wakefulness here, it kind of shows that what you've learned so far, and you started sort of abandoning the struggle, it leads to a place where there's not this like self-criticism and frustration and being hard on yourself, which creates so much of that, the heaviness that you can have when you have trouble sleeping. Now, I think, generally speaking, what Guy Meadow teaches, I think, is very similar to what I teach. I have never in-depth studied ECT, acceptance or commitment therapy, but what I glean, what I learn, is that it's very similar to what I teach, which I call it natto, non-attachment to the outcome, which is basically nothing new. It's the same teaching that we have in yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and Buddhism, and many other places. Now, the thing with Guy Meadow's book is that I think I focus maybe a little bit more on sort of like education around sleep, like in sleep physiology, and how like hyperarousal and the sleep drive works, and a little bit more of that, because I think that the tricky thing when you come to ACT without that, it can be a little bit tricky, because you're like, okay, I just have to accept things the way they are. I'm not going to engage with it. But then it's like, there's kind of these questions in your mind, like, why can't I sleep? What's wrong with me? How does sleep work? I think when those questions are answered, then it leads to basically the same place, So that's a little bit of that. And now, another couple of things that I want to comment on here was that I've had some success, but there's been relapses. I think what's so important there is to think about how we define success. What is success, or what are our goals? Because oftentimes when you've had trouble sleeping, you're sleeping little, your sleep is fragmented, etc., then very naturally you may think of success as sleeping through the night, or having a stretch of nights where you sleep without struggle, or something related to sleep, which really just leads to performance anxiety. Because if success is sleeping or sleeping well or something like that, then the idea becomes, I have to do something so that happens. That's the goal, to have to do something to achieve that goal. And the most fundamental truth when it comes to sleep is that the more you try, the less you sleep. So you can see that sleeping a certain amount, or sleeping well even, as a goal or measure of success leads to performance anxiety and kind of keeps the struggle going, if you will. So what are some more helpful goals or measures of success, if you will? I think it is something like, I can have a night where I'm awake and anxious all night and not criticize myself for it. I can still be kind to myself, even if I'm going through all this pain and suffering. I can be kind to myself even in that. That's very helpful. It's kind of like a goalless goal. It's a goal that's aligned very much with acceptance, self-kindness, and just being mindful what happens without any judgment or intent to change anything, things of that nature. That is a very helpful goal, And then it's relapse can again seem like I did something wrong, then this happened, which is not the case. It's simply that insomnia comes from a place where you're afraid of being awake. And even though you started learning and things are getting a little easier, as long as there's some residual fear, there will be times where there's some struggle sleeping. Completely normal, completely expected part of the process. Nothing strange or unusual there. It's just, if that doesn't happen, then I would be very surprised. Then I'd be like, I don't think you really had insomnia from the beginning, because the brain cannot go from like really scared, thinking there's something wrong, to like, oh, I'm not scared at all. That doesn't happen in a linear or any type of linear or predictable fashion. So that's totally normal. Okay. Let's move on to number 2 here, which was, I'm currently having frequent awakenings at night. Wake up typically 2 or 3 hours after sleep. I love to understand how I can fix that through some form of sleep restriction. You cover that in your book, but I like to know if sleep restriction will have immediate impact on ensuring uninterrupted sleep, or would this also take time? Thanks so much. Look forward to your podcast this week. Anytime, Mike. So basically here we have kind of like a couple of things, maybe like 2 things to talk about that I think are important. Number 1 is, actually, let's start here. When I wrote Set It and Forget It, I had already seen that, the idea behind sleep restriction was quite problematic, because there was this implied controllability idea. And so in traditional CBTI, you're often taught that sleep drive, your body's need to sleep, is what produces sleep, which is true. But the idea then becomes, so if you kind of make yourself stay up late and get up early, you sort of restrict the amount of time you have for sleep like that, then you make yourself sleepy. And even if you're anxious or stressed or whatever, then the sleep drive will make sleep happen. And then you can gradually extend it to a time period that's appropriate for you. Something like that's the idea. But as you can see, the problem here is that whenever you do something with the intent of making sleep happen, so when you stay up late because I'm going to make myself sleepy so I can sleep, that produces tension, preoccupation. It's an effort. So even if you stay up super late, you will not sleep well. Sleeping well always comes from just abandoning any effort, any attempt at trying to sleep. So I think there's easily confusion there, because people think when they do a CBTI program that, oh yes, I found this technique, now I can sleep. But in reality, they start sleeping better because they have confidence in the therapist. They believe this is going to work. So that leads a person to abandon the struggle. And then what happens is that they're like, yes, I found sleep restriction, it's working great. And then there's some stress or something happen and you sleep little, and they're like, okay, that's no problem, I'm going to do my sleep restriction again. And then either you're so scared of doing it because it was so painful, or you're like, you do it and then it doesn't work. And they're like, oh my gosh, not even this works now. So again, it's really helpful not to approach anything as a means to an end. When you approach anything as a means to an end, there's effort, there will be some trouble. So the way I think of it is, it can be helpful to have like this timeless sleep window, like we talked about earlier, where it takes you towards abandoning any effort at trying to fix sleep. That is the key. And if you say, I'm going to get up at a certain time, I'm not going to check the timer at this time, and that leads you to freedom, that's really helpful. And actually going back to number 1 there, in terms of like befriending wakefulness, yeah, I think it's helpful if you don't know the time, you just do something that you enjoy at night. That teaches the brain that there's no danger, no threat. But it doesn't have to be necessarily enjoyable. It's something that's meaningful. Maybe you just want to rest. All that's totally fine. Anything that is not an attempt to make yourself sleep is befriending wakefulness. Sometimes you're really tired at night. And maybe just resting is what you want to do. Doesn't really matter. Now the other component of this was sort of like a forecasting thing, which is like, so we have seen that whenever you try to fix something, there's effort. It's tricky. It leads to more struggle, and then we also have the time component. So, can I do this, and how soon can I expect to see change? Forecasting is super problematic when it comes to sleep, and anything that comes to our internal landscape, by the way. And it's because some things in life can be predicted, such as the weather, because our prediction does not influence the weather. Whether I think it's going to be sunny tomorrow or not has no impact on whether it's going to be sunny or not, right? But try to predict something like the stock market, where like everybody's prediction has an impact on how things go. You can maybe have some kind of long range idea, but you don't really know. There's no way to predict it with any degree of certainty. And partly, at least, it is because the act of predicting has an impact on the outcome. So when you see this, you can see like, oh my gosh, it becomes totally like completely erratic when you start doing that. So to apply this to sleep, for example, it's like, okay, I've done this. Now I think I should see an effect in 2 days. Then automatically you're calculating. You're like, okay, it's been 1 day, nothing happened, but now it's 2 days. If it doesn't happen, this and that, and then, it can go either way. It can be like you feel so certain that this is going to help that actually you abandon the struggle and it seems to help, which isn't that helpful because you think you did something that kind of controlled it, so you have more trouble later on, or your prediction creates so much tension that it, So again, prediction is very, very unhelpful. It's good to know, of course, that sleep isn't complicated. When you learn about sleep and you abandon the struggle and you're not afraid of being awake, then you sleep. it just happens by itself. But predicting is never helpful. All right. So, Mike, I hope that answered your questions. And let us know how things go. And if you have any follow-up ones, we would be super happy to hear them. And then finally, we have a message from Aditya. Hi, Daniel. I just stumbled across your channel and found your advice to be very helpful. Very glad you stumbled across it. I've been struggling with sleep for about 1.5 years. I've tried everything from getting out of bed when I can't sleep, no caffeine, only using your bed for sleep. And yet I often still, take note of the word, still struggle with sleep. I've also tried many strategies like meditation, cognitive shuffling, and that also doesn't work. I noticed that I'm better able to sleep when I am not aware of me sleeping. So meditation has actually made my sleep worse. However, after realizing this, I can't generate thoughts voluntarily, and I just end up meditating in bed, which makes it hard for me to sleep. I also have thoughts about being unconscious that makes my heart race as well. Any advice will be appreciated. So Aditya, thanks so much for the message. And just so I don't forget, on this last part, I also have thoughts about being conscious that makes my heart race as well. You can go through the maybe just go through the most recent videos, and you will find 2 videos. One I believe is in the success stories playlist. Is when Marina guests, we talk about what we call somniphobia there, and there's a recent one when I talk about somniphobia as well, which is basically when you start having a fear of being unconscious, being asleep, fear of falling asleep. Not uncommon at all, but it's just like any other fear. Like when you see that there's it's when you see that there's nothing to be afraid of, there's nothing that can harm you, and you abandon any attempts at trying to make yourself unscared, if you will, and you stop resisting that emotion, then it fades away, which is always very helpful. But yeah, check out somniphobia. I thought that could be helpful for the last part there. But other than that, it was more of a kind of typical insomnia picture. And I think, whenever I hear someone say, I've tried everything, actually, that's really helpful. That's really helpful because of the fundamental fact that someone who sleeps well because of the absence of any effort. If you have somebody in your life that sleeps well, you can ask them, what do you do to sleep so well? And they give you the secret. And the secret is a shrug and I don't know what I do. I don't do anything, right? That's, sleep comes like from nothing, from nowhere. We have a little bit of sleep drive. Our body needs to sleep. We're not trying to sleep. Then it happens. So you can see that when you do one thing to sleep, it creates a little bit of trouble. When you try 2 things, there's going to be more friction. When you try 3, 4, well, when you tried everything, and of course, there's going to be a lot of trouble sleeping, right? So when somebody's tried everything, then it's super easy to see why there's trouble sleeping, right? It's so easy to see, right? And it's also helpful because when you can peel things away, okay, I'm not going to do this thing, then you abandon the struggle, then things happen easy. Okay, I don't need to do this thing either. And now you're kind of reversing the whole thing. So having tried everything is really just an insight. It's just like seeing, okay, all I did actually was part of like maintaining this pattern of trouble sleeping. Now, when it comes to efforts, sleep efforts, very good to read up on. Most efforts are, when we talk about sleep efforts, we often talk about things that are like kind of tangible things. Like a sleep effort is like taking a pill or taking melatonin, taking a supplement in order to sleep. And of course, anything with effort makes you have more trouble sleeping, short-term or long-term, and so it's problematic. Or we think of sleep efforts as avoidance efforts, like I'm not going to drink coffee, or I'm going to go to bed at the same time, or things like that. Anything, all those things are efforts, right? But thoughts can be efforts too, like I need to make myself think this or not think this. Those are also efforts. Those are also attempts at making sleep happen, which are tricky, right? And so then comes the question, like, so how do I not try to make myself think something so that I can sleep? Well, the kind of counterintuitive answer is that if you just take note of your thoughts without any attempt at changing them or judging them or attributing meaning to them, they become fleeting. Fleeting thoughts are just fleeting at baseline. They come and go. They're sentences in our brains, and it's only when we try to stop thoughts or manipulate thoughts, then they become sticky. And I was a little confused by the sentence, like, I noticed that I sleep better when I'm not aware of sleeping. To me, sleeping, like by definition, is something you're not aware of. And then meditation didn't help, I guess, because meditation makes us more aware of things, perhaps. There was the idea there, but I don't know. I think meditation, like everything else, when done as an to sleep, as in, with an intention to make sleep happen, it's an effort. But if you just meditate to be present without any judgment, without intent, without trying to achieve anything, it can be really helpful, as a path towards sort of a non-achieving, non-goal-oriented way of life, if you will. So anyway, I hope this helped. Please let us know if there's follow-up questions, as always. And perhaps a final live question here. Steven says, hi, Dan, my sleep has really improved. I really no anxiety during the night anymore, but I feel there's some residual hyperarousal. Any advice? Absolutely. I'm super glad, Steven, and thanks for all the support. I just want to say this, that this is one of those that calls for absolutely no action. I would be surprised if there was no residual hyperarousal. The whole struggle with sleep is sort of like a trauma. It's something that you have like really painful memories of, and that doesn't just like fade away in a kind of predictable or fairly quick fashion. So when something like your friend talks about something sleep related, you can have a little bit like you sense that you're breathing a little bit faster, your heart's beating, like, you have a little hyperarousal around it, completely normal, and I think that is the most important, like being aware of it, understanding that it is completely normal to have some residual fear and hyperarousal for some time, maybe even like, 10 years from now, when you hear about something, it may still trigger a little bit of like, like that. There would still be memories there, totally normal. And as a follow-up to that, again, when you don't try to stop the hyperarousal or do anything about it, then it just continues to fade. I think of it like, nuclear, like we create like nuclear energy that leaves this kind of like nuclear waste material, if you will, that's harmful to us. So we just kind of store it in a mountain somewhere, right? And that's the level of radiation from it. It has a half-life, right? Maybe every I don't know how many 40 years, it's like half as much, then it's half as much, but it really doesn't go down to zero. It's just halved all the time. And I think of that like when it comes to like the traumatic memories from insomnia, is that when you start to understand anything, you're abandoning the battle, it kind of, those memories kind of have a half-life too. Maybe like every couple of months or every couple of weeks, whatever it is, they're half as the impact. They kind of like the hyperarousal is kind of like half from those memories, and then it's half, then it's half, then it's half. It may not never go away completely, and you probably don't want that either, because you've learned so many things that you can apply to other areas of your life. So yeah, Stephen, hope that helped. And with that said, we'll call it a day for now. Look forward to having you back here real soon, and hope you have a nice weekend. Bye for now.